let me start by telling a story. I don't know if some of you may be familiar with this popular singer called Taylor Swift. So I'm not a Swiftie. I don't really follow her career, but I know a few of her songs, right? So one night, my bedtime routine is I usually scroll through TikTok before I go to bed. And when I scroll through TikTok, I keep getting this video of Taylor Swift because apparently he put a guy named Travis Kelce on a map. Because any of us know who Travis Kelce is? Or Aaron knows. Only one person out of the 30 people, right? So he's not that popular, basically. So that's why the video is saying. So basically, this video came out because allegedly they were started dating a few months ago. So if anyone doesn't know who Travis Kelce is, apparently he's a American football player. And apparently it's a big deal as well because he won 2 Super Bowl championships. I don't know about that, but apparently it's a big deal, right? So I keep getting notification after notification. And one day I got to my phone, I looked through my phone, I get a notification of NFL play. They keep giving me scores and highlights video. And I'm like, I got curious, what is this NFL thing that they keep talking about? So now I'm on to the whole of NFL stuff. So I know what a touchdown is, if anyone wants to know. I know what a touchdown is. Whether it's complete or not, the scoring system and everything. Apparently I am an NFL fan. So amazing what TikTok can do, right? From a simple Taylor Swift video to a football fan. And I thought surely after a few months, they finally confirmed they are dating, and that's it. No more video. I was wrong. Every time they go out for dinner, there's paparazzi photo, and the first thing I scroll through when I open my TikTok, it's their photos all over my TikTok. Nothing else, only Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. But this is the point of the story, right? Obviously, it's not about Taylor or Travis. So my conclusion of this story is people worship their relationship. They just cannot get enough of this person. There's 2 people called Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. So, Judah. I'm telling you this story not because so that you can watch NFL or listen to Taylor Swift, even though if you want to, feel free to do it. But through our passage today, we will look at worship. But what kind of worship that Bible talks about? Is it the kind of worship that turn a non-Swiftie to a Swiftie fans? Is it the kind of worship that springs out so fast in a matter of months and died down after? Is it the kind of worship that happens just because everyone else is worshiping the same thing? Or is it a different kind of worship that satisfies our deepest, neediest part of our soul and lasts through the ages? And this is what we're going to talk about today. So we get to the final 2 chapters of Joshua. And as Adrian mentioned last week, this last part of the book of Joshua focuses on how the people of Israel ought to live as the people of God. Now they have settled in the land. And there is one resounding word that pops up when we read this chapter 23 and 24. And that word is worship. The people of Israel are called to worship God. So like any good sermon, we have 3 points today. I try to make it like 3R, 3 Ps, but I'm not that creative. So 3 points for today is, first, why we worship. Second, how we worship. And lastly, whom we worship. So why, how, and whom. So the first point, why we worship. So this is chapter 23 and 24 written after a long while. So they finally rested in the promised land. No more enemies to fight, and Joshua is getting old. So he gave his final speech to the leaders of Israel. So Joshua 23, verse 1 to 3. After a long time afterward, when the Lord had given rest to Israel from all their surrounding enemies, and Joshua was old and well advanced in years, Joshua summoned all Israel, its elders and heads, its judges and officers, and said to them, I am now old and well advanced in years, and you have seen all that the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake, for it is the Lord your God who has fought for you. So Joshua did what was he supposed to do. He led the people of God to the promised land. And now they're rested. For his last words, Joshua felt the need to remind the people of God what God has done for them. How God drove them out of slavery of Egypt, guided them in the wilderness, and led them to the promised land. And this reminder doesn't only happen once in chapter 23. In these two chapters, Joshua repeatedly reminds them of what God has done for them, how God fulfilled his promises to Israel, how God kept his word to them, and not one of his promises has failed. But here's the interesting thing. In chapter 23, the one that we just read, Joshua refers God as God from the third point of view. But in Joshua 24, verse 3 to 13, Joshua refers God as from the first person point of view. Joshua used the word I repeatedly. Verse 3, I took, I gave, I sent, I did, I brought you out, I destroyed, I deliver, I gave, I sent, I give you a land. In the span of 11 verses, Joshua refers God as I 17 times. If you know about Old Testament, this is how they reiterate something is important. All of the things that Israel has is because of God. In fact, if there is any question, if Israel contribute to the land that they have now, verse 13 says, I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive orchards that you did not plant. They did not labor. They did not build it. They did not plant the plant. But God gave it to them. And the use of the first person point of view telling us this. God is not a distant God that doesn't care about his people. In fact, God is a personal God who is involved in the life of his people. But more than a history lesson for the people of Israel, or telling them God's goodness to them, Joshua is telling the people of Israel that this is their story. They have seen it firsthand, how God leads them. They saw it with their eyes. They experienced it. This is not their father's story. This is their story. And this is important because when we talk about worship, worship doesn't begin with us, but it begins with God. We worship because God has first done something. God is the one who initiates. Worship is merely a response of what God has done for us. So the people of Israel are called to worship God as a response for all the things that God has done for them. God fights for them. He gives them the land. God brings them in. God leads them. God destroys their enemy. God is on their side. And the only natural response to all of this is to bow down and worship God. So church, do you know that the same God who fights for the people of Israel fights for you and I as well? Do you know this God personally? That this is not your parent's story. This is not your spouse's story. This is not your friend's story. But this is your story with God. Have you seen how God come through for you again and again when there is no hope? Do you know that God gives you everything you need, even when we don't deserve it? Because until we know who God is and what He has done for us, it will be impossible to worship Him. Worship will feel like a chore rather than an expression of love. But when we truly know what God has done for us, worship is natural. It is our response to Him. It doesn't have to be forced. No one needs to tell us to do it or how to do it. But we will bow down in awe and reverence of God. Let me put it this way. If you are in a relationship, will you be happy if your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, tell you that they love you, or you're beautiful, or you're amazing, just because they have a schedule to do it. 9 p.m., my alarm tell me to tell Stacy she is beautiful. 6 a.m., for 1 hour, tell Stacy how amazing she is. I think we can all agree that you don't really want that. You want them to tell you all of that stuff because they love you. Because it is a response of love. Because they know who you are and what you have done for them. It is the same with our worship. It shouldn't be forced. It should be an expression of our love for God. It shouldn't be scheduled. But worship is the posture of life for believers. And this is the reason why we worship. Because God is the one who initiates the relationship with us. He has first done it. When life seems easy and good, remember the one who makes it possible for you. The one who gives it to you even when you don't work for it. But when life is hard and everything seems out of control, remember the one who holds you and fights for you. Worshipping God starts by knowing who God is and what He has done for you. So that's the reason for worship, which leads us to the second point, how we worship. But the question now is, how do we actually worship God? Is that a right way? Is that a wrong way? Is that a preferred way? So we're going to look at Joshua 24, verse 14 to 24. So in this passage, if you pay attention to the scripture reading before, the word serve is used 14 times in this passage. So again, there's a repetition of this particular word. So the Hebrew word for serve is avoda. Our ESV Bible translated as the serve, but this word can actually mean worship. So to worship God, it is to serve Him. And one of the most well-known sayings for Christian homes come from verse 15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. How many times, who likes that quote? I love it. When Adrian and Amy moved to their new house, that's the first thing that I want to give them, a print to say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But what does it actually mean when we say we choose to serve the Lord? And I think there are two things of what serving the Lord looks like. So if you're taking a note, point 2, there's 2 more subsections. A life of obedience and a life of commitment. So the life of obedience, Joshua 24, verse 14. Now therefore, the Lord serve Him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods of your fathers, serve beyond the river and Egypt, and serve the Lord. The first thing that Joshua mentioned to the people of Israel, if they are serious to serve the Lord, is to put away the other gods. And I don't think this is a surprise. If we've been following the journey of the people of Israel through the 40 years in wilderness to when they finally settled in the promised land, we see again and again how unfaithful they are to God. Time and time again they grumbled and they chose to serve and worship other gods. So now if they're serious in serving God, the first thing that they need to do is to put away their other gods. They finally get it. This is what the people of Israel saying as a response in verse 24. The Lord our God we will serve. His voice we will obey. They finally get it. To worship God is to obey His commandments. Worship and obedience are not two different things, but they are two sides of the same coin. They exist together. One cannot exist without the other. We cannot say that we worship God and serve Him when we disobey God. Obedience is the mark of a life that worships God. And as we see, serving the Lord through our obedience is an active position where we intentionally put away our other gods. For the people of Israel, they need to put away their golden calves. But before we pass our judgment to the people of Israel of how slow they are to making connection between worship and obedience, but aren't we like that as well? We say we worship God. We say we're Christian. We say we want to serve the Lord. but our actions are far from it. Instead of serving God and obeying His commandments, we choose to serve our self-indulgence. Is it money? Is it power? Is it comfort? Or is it your family? We choose to feed ourselves with the things that we think will make us happy. We choose to do everything we can to make sure our life is comfortable, no matter what the cost. So what is the other God you need to put away today so you can serve the Lord and obey Him? Is it your career? Is it your children? Is it your wealth? Or is it your partner? Church, as we have read before, God has given all of this for us. We don't have to work hard to maintain it. We don't have to work hard to get it. They all have been given to us. It is ours already in God. John Piper says, our obedience is God's pleasure when it proves that God is our treasure. Our obedience is God's pleasure when it proves that God is our treasure. What is the one thing that you treasure more than God in your life? What is that little God that you love more than God? Would you write it down in response of what God has done for you? To worship God is to obey Him. The second thing, to worship God is to commit to God. Far too many times, we worship God, we serve God only when it is convenient for us to do it. When life is easy, when things are good. We like to be involved with God, but not many of us like to be committed. Let me put it this way. There's a chicken and a pig. Apparently they're best friends and they're walking together in the street. Because they're such a good friend, they think, why don't we open a business together? And then, so the chicken say, what do you think, pig? And the pig says, maybe, I would consider that. But what would we sell and what would the restaurant name be? So they think long and hard, and the chicken finally says, what about we open a brunch place because they're pretty popular, and then we can serve bacon and egg. Might as well name the restaurant the Bacon and Egg. Sounds good, makes sense, pretty simple. But the pig responds by saying, no thanks, I wouldn't want to do that because I will be committed while you only be involved. So here's the point of the story. The question is not about the output or what they will bring to the restaurant because they both will contribute. But the question is about the level of sacrifice. The chicken will lay eggs. So the chicken will lay eggs for the restaurant. And you know when chicken lay eggs, they probably sacrifice a few hours of their free range time to go inside the coop and then lay the eggs, right? But with the pig, in order to provide the bacon, what does the pig need to sacrifice? The pig needs to sacrifice itself. The level of sacrifice is different. It's a made-up story, obviously. There's no restaurant called Bacon and Egg or a pig and an egg involved. But isn't it true? So many people want to be involved, but not a lot want to be committed. They will contribute as long as it doesn't hurt too much. As long as it doesn't cost us that much. So what about us today? If we look at ourselves, are we the type of people who are committed? Or are we the type of people who like to be involved? Are we the kind of Christian who lays eggs or provides the bacon? If we can be honest with ourselves, most of the time, we choose the easy way. It's certainly true for myself. I donate, I help, I serve in the church, as long as it fits my schedule. As long as I don't have to sacrifice too much. We still contribute to the outcome, but we do not want to commit just yet. We like to be involved. To worship God is to be committed to Him, to live sacrificially for Him, even when it hurts. But maybe most of us today is different, right? We want to be committed. Or at least if I ask everyone here this morning, hopefully, most of us will answer, I want to commit to God. Or at least try to do it. Maybe we are willing, but our biggest problem is our heart. We will only commit to something that we love. So back to Taylor Swift example, because it has to be connected. So I have a friend who really loves Taylor Swift, not in this church. A few months ago, when they finally announced the Taylor Swift ticket, everyone tried to get it, right? We too. But I was unlucky. I didn't get it. But my friend got hers. And when I asked, how much did you buy your ticket for? Be prepared to be shocked. It's more than $1,000. Whereas I'm only prepared to spend $80 for the ticket. Huge difference, if you ask me. So the problem is not, I don't want to commit to the concert. Because if I get the $80 ticket, you bet believe I will go to MCG and I will sing my heart out to all the songs I know. The difference is not the level of commitment, but I don't love Taylor Swift enough to spend $1,000. For me, she isn't worth my $1,000. You commit to the thing that you love. So how's your heart this morning? Do you truly love God with all your heart? Is God worth your sacrifice? Which leads us to the last point, whom we worship. I mean, it's clear that we should worship God. But do we really worship God? Every single one of us worshiping something. Whether we realize it or not, whether we say it out loud or not, we worship something in our life. Whether it's God, Taylor Swift, the bacon, or other things in our life. But back to our text in Joshua. For the people of Israel, they promised that they will only worship God from now on because they know what God has done. But if we know our Bible, we know they failed yet again. In fact, the book after Joshua called the book of Judges, we see how the people of God turn 180 degrees and live their lives as if they did not know who God is. They forgot all the things that God has done for them. And Joshua foretold this in his last speech. He told the people of Israel that they will not be able to do it. Joshua 24, verse 19 to 20. But Joshua said to the people, you are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgression or your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, then he will turn and do you harm and consume you after having done you good. So even though Joshua wants to believe the people of Israel that they will love God, that they will serve him and obey him, he knows that they will not be able to do it. They will fail. Isn't it our reality as well? We say that we want to love God. We say we want to worship him. We want to obey him. But the fact of the matter is, our heart is so busy loving other things, worshiping our little gods, treasuring our other things. Left to our own, we will fail to worship God, just like the people of Israel. We too deserve God's wrath, and for God to turn his back on us, our best effort is not good enough. But here's the good news for us today. Because of what Jesus did on the cross, when God looks at us, he doesn't see our failures to worship him or serve him, but he sees his son's perfect word. When we put our faith in Jesus, his perfect work is ours. Where we fail to obey God's commandment, Jesus willingly obeys the Father's will to the cross. Where we fail to commit our lives to God, Jesus committed to you and I till the very end, to the point of death. Where we fail to worship God, the Holy Son of God, who deserves to be worshipped, came down, took the place of the criminal, and bled out for us. And where we fail to serve God, God turns his back on Jesus on the cross. so that he will never, ever turn his back on us. My brothers and my sisters, would you come and worship God today, knowing that he doesn't wait for you to come to him, but he sent his one and only Son on the cross and committed to you to the very end. Let's pray.